It's the PM team. Welcome into a hump day edition of the show. Chris Muller, solo again. Andrew Filipponi, his final day away as he enjoys Quebec City and as he tries to immerse himself in French culture. We had a bunch of things planned for today's show, but apparently we've got some breaking news right now, and I kind of thought that this was going to happen. Donnie, this is a big one. This is a statement released by the Steelers' official Twitter account. We start today with major news. Statement from Stephon Tuitt. And I'm going to quote this, read this word for word. With respect to the Steelers organization, my teammates and coaches, I would like to officially announce that I have come to the decision to retire from the NFL. I am thankful to have had the opportunity to represent the city of Pittsburgh for the past 8 seasons and am blessed to leave this game with my health. After the tragic loss of my brother Richard and upon completing my degree from the University of Notre Dame, I know I am being called to move beyond the sport of football. I want to thank everyone for the love and support they have shown both on and off the field, and again want to thank the Rooney family, Coach Tomlin, and the entire Pittsburgh organization. It was an honor and a privilege to play for this historic team. Go Steelers. Stephon Tuitt has retired from the NFL. We had something happen here at the station about an hour ago where upon one of our employees, our buddy John, who works on the digital side, just simply said something like he apparently has some moles too. There are Mulsey moles, and he apparently has some as well. And he just said there might be news happening. We weren't sure, we didn't know, we weren't positive what the nature of it was, but that there might be something happening, and now we do know. And now, what a couple of days ago, Donnie, I think felt like a situation that was going in the right direction, at least in the sense that you were going to get Stephon Tuitt coming back, has abruptly turned. Stephon Tuitt has retired from the NFL, clearly citing in his statement the death of his brother in that hit and run. I believe it was a year ago, June 4th, it will be the day, as part of the reason why. Omar Khan's comment, Steelers general manager, on the matter. Quote, I want to thank Stephon for all he did for the Steelers during his 8-year career in Pittsburgh. His success, both on and off the field, speaks volumes for who he is as a person and a player. Stephon has always handled himself with class and maturity as he continues to be a great husband, father, son, and family man in his personal life. Now that he has informed us he is retiring from football, we are all thrilled to see what he becomes as a person and professional after graduating from Notre Dame this past month. We are excited for what lies ahead in his life and will continue to support him in any way we can, end quote. That's Omar Khan. Wow. I think you always knew that this was going to be a possibility. In fact, it was probably the single most speculated on event or aspect of the Steelers heading into OTAs. Beyond, Donnie, all the drama of is Kenny Pickett going to pick things up quickly, and just the fact that this team is a first-round quarterback for the first time in almost 2 decades. Beyond the Devin Bush continuing on the injury recovery trail. Beyond Brian Flores now being a very high-profile and overqualified member of Mike Tomlin's defensive coaching staff. Beyond Miles Jack coming in, or a retooled offensive line and a new offensive line coach in the first year of a real Matt Canada offense. I actually think one major thing loomed over all of that, and it was Stephon Tuitt's decision. And I'm led to believe that this came as a genuine surprise to, at the very least, some of his teammates, maybe to the entire organization. I think Cam Hayward is an extremely honest broker. When Cam Hayward says X, Y, or Z, I do not think Cam Hayward says it just to say it. And Cam Hayward was the guy mere days ago who sounded very optimistic that Stephon Tuitt was going to be here, was going to play this year, and was going to be a productive member of the Steelers. Said he had talked to Stephon Tuitt. So either it was the rare instance of Cam Hayward throwing up a bit of a smokescreen, the utility of which I don't really sense or don't really gather, or Stephon Tuitt just took everybody by surprise. 8-year career for the Pittsburgh Steelers for Stephon Tuitt as a pretty productive defensive end when healthy comes to an end. Guy who racked up 34.5 sacks. His 2020 season, he had a career-high 11. He looked like he was maybe entering the prime of his career, but something that I don't think any of us ever wants to have to deal with, most of us haven't had to deal with, just clearly was a major derailing factor here, Donnie. The hit-and-run death of his brother. His mother was there when it happened. Obviously a massively affecting thing. The Steelers tried to keep sort of a line out to him. They definitely did it all last year. I think they conducted themselves, frankly, with a ton of class and in a way that not a lot of NFL teams necessarily would have in that situation. But it comes to an end right now. Stephon Tuitt announcing his retirement from the NFL. What, beyond obviously the personal implications for him and the fact that a major horrible life event clearly shaped this decision, in that I'm going to gather here that he genuinely didn't know what he was going to do probably until very near the time where he made this announcement. I can't imagine that he sat all offseason and was thinking, I'm done, and I'm just going to wait until OTAs to announce it. Beyond all of that now, Donnie, this punches a gaping hole in the Steelers' defense that a lot of people, I think, felt like was going to be filled by a guy who, at his best, sometimes looked better than Cam Hayward. There has been a lot of I think whatever degree of optimism you have about the Steelers this year, people had, that they might continue their run of non-losing seasons, that they might actually maybe win 9, maybe even 10 games. I think a lot of it was tied up in the idea that despite not having Ben Roethlisberger anymore, you'd actually turn the page there. You'd have a quarterback or quarterbacks who, while not nearly as accomplished as Roethlisberger in any stretch of the imagination, could more adequately run Matt Canada's offense, but that more than anything else, you were going to get a defense that got Tyson Alualu back, that got Stephon Tuitt back, that got Devin Bush 1 year healthier, that added in Myles Jack, that saw maybe Alex Highsmith take another leap forward, that had retained Ahkello Witherspoon, had added Levi Wallace, had made some moves that people were happy about, and was going to be a force. And now, make no mistake about it, with Tuitt retired, that whole plan gets thrown into flux. And now the Isaiah Loudermilks, the Chris Wormleys of the world, DeMarvin Leal, you would think a lot of different players are going to be asked to pick up the slack for a guy everyone hoped would be back, but maybe had it in the back of their minds would just be done with football altogether, which he now is. Stephon Tuitt, your breaking news here today, retiring from the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this just sucks overall. And I don't want to be the, I told you so person. I didn't have all that much faith that we were going to see Stephon Tuitt again because of the unimaginable things that he's had to go through for this last year and a half. Cam Hayward gave us all a little bit of hope. We don't know if he knew this all along, if he was just kind of covering time for a friend of his, a brother of his. But something I also immediately thought of, Chris, was the top 2 picks in the 2014 draft were 2 absolute ass kickers for the Steelers, Ryan Shazier and Stephon Tuitt. One of them suffers a career-ending injury.
And kind of a freak play.
On the cusp of
greatness.
Yeah, I mean, a season where he was very much in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, and Stephon Tuitt goes through what he's gone through, and now he's done. Both of them
no
retired.
One wants to imagine, yeah.
8 years later.
I don't know. I was genuinely, I guess I'm going to claim some surprise here, though. I genuinely thought Stephon Tuitt was going to come back. Here's what Cam Hayward said. This was a week and a day ago. Cam Hayward on Stephon Tuitt.
Yeah, I've talked to him. He'll be here sooner or later. I'm not counting my sheep right now. My guys will be here. It's really early. I've never had full attendance at an OTAs. I don't expect it. Everybody thought because he sold his house, he wasn't part of the team. So, man, you can rent anything. So we'll see him sooner or later because I'm confident in Stephon Tuitt. Last year's last year. We grow, we live, we move on. My brother was hurting last year, and he had to do some things in his life to get him right. And his knee wasn't right. I can imagine being through a situation he went through. I think we're in a much better place. It's hard to move your family. To ask a guy to come during the offseason, is that fair? All we're asking the guy is be ready for week 1. This is not something to go crazy about. Let's just worry about the guys that are here, but I know he's getting work in as well.
So I'm led to believe there, right off the bat, Donnie, I'm led to believe that Cam Hayward – I'm led to believe two things. One, that Cam Hayward wasn't just trying to keep a good face on the situation or put a good face on the situation. That's one thing. Two, I guess three actually. Two is that his talks with Tuitt legitimately led him to believe that Stephon Tuitt was going to come back. And three, that tells me that either Stephon Tuitt was sending maybe signals that he was leaning one way or was just not telling even those closest to him for sure what his plans were and that Cam was trying to make an inference, a hopeful one. But Stephon Tuitt, one thing we found out about him for a while, we've known about him for a while, he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. He's a pretty sensitive guy, it seems like. What he went through, no one should have to go through. And it's also obvious that he is somebody for whom football was never going to be the be-all, end-all. You graduate from Notre Dame, you have that on the resume, and you've got interests outside of the sport, you can go places. I think people know that. There's something else about this to me. There's another part of this. We know how much this affected Stephon Tuitt's mom because she was there when it happened, Donnie. We know that football is a very violent game. You just cited Ryan Shazier nearly being paralyzed and having his career end on one random play. Stephon Tuitt, big dude, strong dude, but big, strong guys get hurt severely all the time in the NFL. There's a part of me that thinks that part of this decision for him, or maybe even a majority of it, was my mom lost one child. I don't want to potentially severely injure myself and impair myself for the rest of my life and put her through that. That entered my mind the minute our guy John on the digital side brought in his phone so I could look at it because, of course, Twitter wasn't working on my computer at the start of the show. That was the thought. Doesn't want his mother to have to potentially go through something even remotely similar to what she went through a year ago. I'll give the Steelers credit. I thought they handled it as what is a very difficult situation for all parties involved as tactfully as you can. I mean, I actually don't think people would have necessarily faulted them if they had said, we can't afford to keep you around at this point. Like, we have to move on. I think there are NFL teams that absolutely would have done that. I'm not saying all of them would have. I'm not saying the Steelers are uniquely benevolent in this story, but I do think they handled and comported themselves about as well as you could.
Yeah, and from, just conversations with friends and everything like that, they agree. The Steelers have given him pretty much all of the time in the world to deal with something like this, but there is a point where you have to make that business decision, and I think there were more people than we realized that were on that side of things. It's like, yeah, Stephon Tuitt's a great player. He went through something unimaginable, but at some point, a business move has to be made. Now, we thought that would be the end of the story, the Steelers releasing him, but he ended it himself. He ended it on his own terms. And in the end, I think that's a good thing. We didn't have to see the Steelers cut Stephon Tuitt. He got to end it on his own.
So there's the entire thing about the post-June 1 cut or whatever that was going to save them some money, With him retiring now, I have to check on what that's going to mean for the cap implications of it, but there was a business component to this for sure. The idea of a post-June 1 cut, though, Donnie, was that it was going to save them money up front, but on the back end, that was going to cost them, that it was going to flip around sort of the dynamics of how that money, that dead cap got accumulated or got meted out. But that's the big story now. Steelers draft a defensive end type of guy, somebody that I think they felt was a sort of a jack of all trades in the third round. Here's the other thing. Now you got to play this out. You have to sort of think about these things. When they drafted Leal, you could run it through a couple filters, none of which maybe were a tell that they had an inkling that Stephon Tuitt was not coming back. You know what I mean? You could say they are getting older anyway. He's just turned 29. That's not young in defensive line terms. Alualu's not the same position as Leal, but he's 35. Hayward tells Mina Kimes he wants to play for 5 more years, but that would take him to age 38, which is really rarefied air for any defensive lineman in the NFL. You could have made, and I think people did make, I know I did, you could make a case that drafting Leal was this is just smart business. High, maybe a little bit of a risk guy, boom or bust guy, but a former 5-star talent at a position where you are going to age out one way or the other sooner rather than later. And where maybe if Stephon Tuitt had come back, his cap number was not going to make it worth the while to keep him long term if he didn't look like himself. But now you have to go back, I think, and revisit that pick, Donnie. And I would imagine you have to say maybe they had an inkling. Maybe Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin had some very hard conversations with him that not even Cam Hayward had. And maybe they had a better feel than everybody else did for how this was going to play out.